Vegas came away with game one of the WNBA Finals, but it was really Phoenix that helped them out.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everyone, I'm Kalia Butler. I will be one of your hosts for Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you to Howard and all his contributions that he has had. Me and my co-host Sophia Jones, who I'm going to introduce here in 1 second, are just so honored to take over and talk to you guys about women's basketball. A little bit about me. I'm the sideline reporter for the Chicago Sky. I was also the manager for the women's basketball team at DePaul when I was in college. So I was all around Doug Bruno and his Hall of Fame ways. And I just love women's basketball and the sport of basketball in general. But we also have Sophia Jones, who is here with me as well, who is the analyst for the Valkyries. Sophia.
Thank you so much, Kalia. Yes, I'm the radio color analyst for the Golden State Valkyries. Also for University of San Francisco women's basketball, I serve as their television color analyst, and I played Division I college basketball at San Jose State University. So go Spartans.
We love to see it. Again, so excited to be here with you all. Thank you guys for just coming in and watching us honestly talk about women's basketball. Obviously, the WNBA Finals are the talk of women's basketball at the moment. A lot going on. But when it comes down to this last game that we just saw between the Phoenix Mercury and the Vegas Aces, our stance is that Phoenix kind of messed up late game execution wise. When you think of the biggest takeaway of that, it's where Alyssa Thomas missed those 2 free throws. And again, there's a lot of things that happen in a game that doesn't always have to come down to that, but it doesn't help when you miss 2 key free throws at the end.
And those 2 key free throws were when Phoenix was only down 1 point. AD did the majority of the hard work. She had a great strip front by A'ja Wilson, took the ball all the way herself, drew the foul against Jackie Young, but then she just missed 2 free throws. And that was really crucial for the Phoenix Mercury to not get themselves, or to then not get themselves back into the game, because then they had to foul on the other end playing that game. But where I felt like it really also started to go awry for the Phoenix Mercury was early in the fourth quarter when Satou Sabally picked up her 5th foul, and then in frustration, she kind of threw the ball down and then picked up a technical. So that was a real turning point that shifted the momentum in favor of the Aces, because Phoenix really controlled the majority of that game. It was back and forth, but it never felt like it was totally out of Phoenix's grasp.
And to your point, I think a lot of the end of this game was mindset as well. When you have Alyssa Thomas that's missing 2 of those free throws, that just kind of comes down to being locked into the game. Again, they're free throws. And it's difficult because, you're not in that position. I've never been in a WNBA Finals position where it's just like, oh, it's these final 2 free throws. But again, when you have been a professional for that long, when it comes down to late game execution like that, as we're talking about, those are going to be vital for your team, especially as a leader for your team who has carried your team all the way into the WNBA Finals to even face the Aces right now. And to your point with Satou Sabally, this has been a little bit of a problem for her all season long in controlling her emotions. And now is not the time for her to have any errors when it comes to that, because again, it can be very costly to your team when not only are you picking up your 5th foul, but you are also getting a technical for your team. And when you're in those final moments of a key game like this, fourth quarter, anything that is impacting your flow and what you have been able to do the entire game. As you mentioned, they were leading for a good amount of the game. They're at least in the game the entire time. Started the fourth quarter ahead of the Aces. And then when we're looking at some of the defensive things that they were doing as well, they didn't execute in the way that we have seen them doing before. This is a team that's really well known for forcing a lot of turnovers and playing fast, trying to play in transition, again, trying to get Alyssa Thomas out as much as possible and have her rolling downhill. But that's not something we really saw out of them.
Definitely. And against a team like the Las Vegas Aces, where they do a lot of switching on defense, it really prevents the ball handler from getting a proper angle coming downhill off of those screens. So when you can get offense from your defense, push and transition, Alyssa Thomas is one of the most dangerous players in the WNBA. When she's just taking the ball straight up the gut, you have to have an early pickup point and then just facilitating and finding her teammates. And we didn't really see much of that from the Phoenix Mercury, and just talking about again that defense. And I would also bring up, just with some of that end of game stuff, Kahleah had 19 points in the first half and only 2 in the second, and those 2 points came within the first 3 minutes of the third quarter. So she was non-existent down the stretch, and that's another player that you look towards that you need that production from.
And a balanced offense overall for them in that game. As you mentioned, Kahleah had 19 within just the first half, but she ended with 21 points, went 5 of 9 from 3, really came out hot. Part of the reason that they were able to, get a lead early on and kind of maintain it for a bit, or at least just stay with it. Satou, Sabally, she had 19 points. Alyssa Thomas had 10. So overall, a pretty balanced scoring, because you also, when you consider Monique, who also was in double digits, and Dewana Butler, everybody coming in and contributing. So there's a balanced attack overall. But again, it comes into that late finish where they really hurt themselves. It was truthfully less of what the Aces were doing and more of their own personal errors and mistakes. Again, we're thinking of Alyssa Thomas missing those 2 free throws. We're thinking of some of the execution of even Satou, Sabally, picking up that 5th foul. That's, again, difficult when it's an aggressive game. There's a lot of contact, but just being smart, knowing that you are one of the key players, and understanding that you're already playing with 4 fouls, and knowing that your team is going to need you late in the stretch. But also just defensively, what we have seen, as we've kind of mentioned as well, this is a team that has really prided themselves on their defense, to your point, create their offense for themselves. And there was a lot of their own errors defensively, just even when you're thinking about switching, just guarding, it all came down to their own personnel and understanding where they need to be and their rotations. And it just seemed there was a couple of late opportunities when it came to that, which allowed Vegas to take advantage.
And when you're kind of in that line of thought, it really kind of draws back to the team needs to be locked in. During a point in the game, they mentioned on the broadcast that Nate Tibbetts just felt like they were going through the motions. And it felt like that a little bit with them, being a little lackadaisical on defense. Offensively, they were Aces threw out a zone, and they threw that in a couple times. And Phoenix was shooting great. They shot 38.9% from the 3-point, 14 of 36. So they were really hitting their threes. And so for them to not really counteract that zone with how well they were shooting, and just having that recognition, they're in the zone, we got to run this set, is just a mental error, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, a lot of this does come down to the mental, especially when you are so far into the season. A lot of people didn't even expect the Mercury to necessarily make the finals. So now it's almost a sense of they need to believe in themselves that they can go ahead and finish these games off and play a full 40-minute game. But as much as we think Phoenix just kind of hurt themselves, the Aces did end up winning the game. So coming up, A'ja Wilson having another standout game, of course, as expected, but the biggest impact came from the bench.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categories of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. And if you're one thing like me, Not as much spreadsheets and numbers, more colors and graphs. And that is exactly what Monarch Money does. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code locked on NBA in all caps at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code in all caps locked on NBA.
A'ja Wilson, our 4-time MVP, doing exactly what we expected her to do in a time like this. A'ja Wilson, first player with 20 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 0 turnovers in a game in the WNBA Finals. Now, she's already breaking records by being the only player in the WNBA to ever have 4 MVPs. And now to go into the finals again and be the first player ever, 20 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. What really stands out to me most is 0 turnovers. She was protecting the ball the entire night.
And especially with someone that is as ball dominant as A'ja Wilson in the different places that she is getting it against against Alyssa Thomas, who's a great defender in her own right. That ball security is huge. We just talked about for Phoenix, they generate a lot of offense from their defense and just getting it and going. And so for A'ja to protect the ball was huge. But she really found her spots, and a lot of her teammates were doing this thing as well, which I think later on helped to open up the floor for her. But I was also very impressed defensively where she had that assignment against Alyssa Thomas, and you could tell as the game progressed, she started to figure out a little bit more. And AT, we know she loves to lower that shoulder, get to the basket. So you saw a little bit less of that, and I felt like A'ja's height and length really kept her out of the paint as well.
We've talked about Alyssa Thomas is a little bit not necessarily undersized for her position, but when you're thinking of going against an A'ja Wilson, who is just so dominant, can be a defensive player of the year, obviously has been before, difficult to go up against, especially when she's starting to understand how you're moving. And if she's already figuring that out game one, it's going to be a problem moving forward. But you also mentioned a really good point that obviously A'ja Wilson doing A'ja Wilson things, as we all understand, but it was really the bench production that gave Vegas a push in this one. And I think this is wonderful because this is the first game that we've really seen a couple of these players stand out like this. Dana Evans, 21 points. Literally, Becky Hammon came into the post-game presser afterwards and could not stop speaking so highly of her. It was like she was the reason that we won today. Her push was so significant. And prior to this game, the highest scoring game that Dana Evans has had so far this season was only 14 points. So to come in and perform like this, 21 points off the bench, getting a read and feel of the game and being able to come in and produce the way that she did, if she can continue to do this and be that spark off the bench, it's going to be very difficult for the Mercury to read.
She's just such an energizer bunny. She comes in and immediately starts spinning. Offensively, has so much speed, can get downhill really quickly. We saw a lot of confidence in her shot. She was hitting threes, which again really helps to space out the floor to allow players like A'ja Wilson or NaLyssa Smith inside to go to work. But just being that calm, collected, I guess, presence and ball handler, especially when you have players like Jackie Young, who was kind of going through some things, or a couple times where she was shown on the bench getting massaged or using the percussion gun. So for her to fill in and step up to this responsibility was huge.
What makes a really dangerous team, especially when we're thinking about the finals right now, is when you have a threat even at the end of your bench. And I believe the Aces is one of those teams that no matter whose number is called, they can go up and perform. And that is why they've been able to go on a 17-0 run after All-Star weekend and been able to make this push to come back to the finals. But it wasn't just Dana Evans, it's also Jewell Loyd. And I think anybody that knows me knows I love Gold Mamba. She's from Illinois. I've watched her play. She was even helping out at DePaul for some years. So seeing her be at the level that we all once knew her to be at, when you think of her and you think of her in a Seattle Storm jersey, right? And now playing with the Aces, wasn't necessarily what we anticipated for her this entire season, but to come and have 18 points, the only other time she had scored higher than this was after the All-Star break as well, where she had 21, but to come in and execute with 18 points, contributing to what Dana Evans had. And to your point, being able to be one of those perimeter threats as well that allows some spacing on the floor. And we've talked about it before as well with A'ja Wilson. Not only does it give her more space, to work, especially when you're going against AT, you want to have all the space you can because she's strong and going to clog off the entire paint just by herself. But we've also spoke about how great of a facilitator A'ja has been as well, and something that she's really tried to add to her game each season. So the fact that she can get in but she can also go out and trust in her teammates like a Jewell Loyd and Dana Evans to hit some of those shots as well have been really key for them.
And this performance by Jewell Loyd was something that you were kind of waiting on, watching her throughout the playoffs. She had a little bit of a rough start, similar to when she first got to the Aces during the offseason, where at the beginning it was a rough start. Of course, she was moved to the bench, but it was her own idea to Becky Hammon to be placed there. And I think that role is something that she's really embraced. And that reflects a lot of her mindset. When you have that team over me mentality, that's where we see this squad that is now 1-0 in the WNBA Finals. And then that always also helps to keep your own mind fresh so that she can come in and do whatever is asked of her. And those 18 points were huge. They needed all of them, especially that 3-point shot, because like you said, there's a reason why her nickname is Gold Mama, because she's not afraid to pull, and you better watch out if she starts hitting.
Yeah, everybody has to be careful because if Jewell is on, she is on, and she is going to make it known. But another great part of her as well, as you mentioned, is the fact that she even decided that, hey, maybe it's best for me to come off the bench. And I think this is something that I've even learned from watching WNBA players with the Sky. I think somebody that really comes to mind is Elizabeth Williams, who she really switched off being in the starting role, Angel getting hurt. So then she's going back to the bench. Sometimes she's playing with Angel in that starting lineup. And I just remember, asking her quite often, what is it like to constantly have to change your role in a sense, because being a starter and being the first one to come off the bench, two different roles, both very impactful, but how do you adjust as a player? And she said truthfully that she enjoyed coming off of the bench. Like, starting is wonderful, but she really did enjoy coming off the bench, because while the starters are actively playing and being able to get, those first 2-3 minutes of the game, kind of feeling everything out, for her and somebody who was just so intelligent as her, as Jewell Loyd, as every other player that is on these teams, they get to watch the game and they have such a deep understanding of, they can still just, tap the assistant coach next to them and run some ideas off. So then when they get into action, they know exactly how they want to execute.
No, exactly. Hey, there's no shame in the bench game. As someone who dealt with some injuries in college, I had to come off the bench a couple times too, and it just exactly how you put it. It allows you to see the game unfold from a little bit of an observer standpoint, which sometimes it's hard to see everything when you're on the floor. You have that assistant coach next to you. Not only does that help you, but that helps the assistant coach and the coaching staff figure out, hey, I'm noticing this is what we got to do. So a lot of credit to Jewell for just not having as big of an ego in order to do that, because again, this is why her team's in the position that they are now.
Absolutely. Really excited to see tomorrow's game between the Aces and the Mercury. Will the Mercury bounce back and just fix some of those self-inflicted wounds, or are the Aces on a tear right now? But more coming up. Napheesa Collier calling out the WNBA Commissioner. We'll get into those comments that she made and more. Well, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, if you're betting on tomorrow's games, because obviously everybody is a WNBA fan, and you're going to be tuning into the Aces versus the Mercury, tomorrow's game spread, the Aces are a 2.5-point favorite. And if you're anyone like me, I do believe the Aces are going to come away with another championship. However, the Mercury are definitely going to make it tough, and they are not going away anytime soon. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Sophia, Cathy Engelbert has made some very controversial comments, according to some statements that Napheesa Collier from the Minnesota Lynx had made in her goodbye presser, essentially, about just some comments that she had made in discussions with the WNBA commissioner. Some of the main comments that she had made were about the officiating in the league. That was Napheesa's main problem. She addressed that she feels as there has been that they have the best league in the world, that they have the best fans in the world, but they have the worst leadership in the world. And year after year, the only thing that remains consistent, again, quoting Napheesa, is the lack of accountability from our leaders, mainly calling out Cathy. If I didn't know exactly what the job entailed, maybe I wouldn't feel this way. And I think that was a key part to what she was saying, because she understands what it takes to be a leader, obviously being able to create Unrivaled with Breanna Stewart and her husband. She understands what it takes to create a league, and understanding that at the end of the day, these are also humans as well as athletes. But then some of those other key remarks that Cathy had made in those conversations that Napheesa talks about is saying that Caitlin Clark is lucky that she is making $16 million outside of the WNBA, because without them, she wouldn't have a platform. Another comment that Napheesa stated was that the players should be on their knees, essentially, being happy that Cathy was even able to get them the TV deals that they have this season. I was personally flabbergasted by these comments. But Sophia, I want to hear what your thoughts were on this.
Flabbergasted is a great adjective, because that's appalled is another one that I was thinking of. They were just, because Cathy Engelbert, she came out before game one. I think it was about a 25-minute presser, and she had her opening statement, and then the floor open for questions. And she said, so after, like you mentioned, when she said players should be on their knees thanking her, she said that there's a lot of inaccuracy out there on social media on all this reporting. I think what's most helpful is to focus on, I have been in touch with Napheesa, but there's been a lot of reporting, a lot of inaccuracy, a lot of what I did and didn't say. And then she, pulled out I'm disheartened. I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids that are devastated by these comments. And she didn't really answer many questions. She said that as a general kind of ambiguous statement that there are inaccuracies, but when she was asked about and mentioned these specific comments that Napheesa Collier said that she made, she was beating around the bush a little bit. And then she's, like you said, I'm a human too, I have a family, and these players have family. I think Napheesa Collier might be the face of, she has a family.
Like
with her. Yeah. So there were some very interesting statements by Cathy Engelbert in that press conference.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, Cathy's frying me right now, because the way that she's acting like a guilty politician is just insane to me. Because in a lot of this, I need to know, I need her PR team to be a little bit better when it comes to this right now, or if she has one. But the way that she is framing these statements afterwards, and even just the direct statement that she had of being like, oh, I'm disheartened by the fact that Napheesa felt this way, but has never actually stated that anything Napheesa said was wrong or that she didn't make those statements. And people care less about everything else that or even Cathy saying, oh, I just want everybody to know that I've been in touch with Napheesa. Well, you were clearly in touch with her before as well, and you still felt comfortable enough to say these statements to Napheesa Collier, who is one of the faces of the league. So the fact that she felt comfortable to say it to her beforehand and still has not actually redacted anything she said or saying that any of that was false, just saying, oh, there's a little uncertainty in the media. That is everyone's default thing to say. And I think it is very important that Napheesa had these statements in her exit interview, because she had receipts. She had everything written out. She had receipts. She had exact quotation marks. I wouldn't be surprised if like Napheesa was secretly recording these conversations because she's like, yep, I'm going to need this later. But she didn't, like, she literally had receipts. She had verbatim what Cathy Engelbert had said. And the WNBA commissioner has had no real response to it besides the fact that I respect my players and I also have a family. I'm just not getting it.
It's the fact that she's just, you put it perfectly. She's almost treating this as a politician, not just giving a clear-cut answer. There was even another one that Malika Andrews, and shout out to Malika Andrews because she was front and center in those press conferences asking the right questions. But Malika asked her if she feels she's still the right voice and expects to be commissioner beyond this collective bargaining agreement. And Cathy's response was, obviously, I've never been a quitter. I'm entering my 40th year this month in business. Never been a quitter, never shied away from tough situations. If there's things the players have a respect on that they don't like what we're doing, we'll fix them. That was another one. I thought that was a perfect lob by Malika to potentially say, you know what, I know there are a lot of doubts about me, but I'm going to get this done. I'm going to listen to players. The league is growing, and I'm going to make sure that it continues to grow. But she didn't really give that answer. She framed it more in like a negative connotation, seeing like, I'm not going to quit, which, I mean, it's still good to not be a quitter. And I guess it's still good that she mentioned that, but you also want that reassurance. And I think that's what Malika was trying to get out of her that we didn't really hear.
And we think of those CBA agreements too. That is supposed to be a done deal by the end of this month. It's October 4th. It's supposed to be done by October 31st. And it seemed the biggest takeaway from All-Star Weekend, obviously, players made that statement of having the t-shirts on saying, pay us what you owe us. Cathy really no response to it at all, even though she was physically at WNBA Finals weekend, and her just like being in the stream with the stud buds dancing and just being like, LOL, everything is fun and dandy. But, you know, I think it's good to see those aspects of her too, because I'm not here to dish the WNBA commissioner. However, I think it was good to see, you know, that light of her of saying like, okay, players do get along with her. Players can have fun with her. Okay, great. But at the end of the day, the WNBA is still a business. So if they can't come to these agreements and if players are not satisfied with how they're being treated, the referees at hand, and how that might impact their game, and just, you know, the overall level of play. And everybody wants more people to tune into the WNBA. Everyone knows this season has had the highest ratings. If they can't even play the way that they would like to play because of how games are being officiated, which was obviously Napheesa's biggest qualm and what multiple players and coaches that have gotten fined for all season long saying, it's going to be a problem. And I don't know if players are going to want to come back to a league that maintains the same level of leadership.
And I would at least say that Cathy mentioned in that press conference, she said that a task force will be created to ensure that the officiating platform evolves in step with the growth of the league. And so this is where all of her words now need to start being put into action. Because I'm glad I can imagine we're all happy to hear her say that. The players are happy to hear her say that. It's just a matter of execution now. And she needs to give the players a reason to want to work in a symbiotic relationship and not just at each other's throats all the time. I think that could be a level of cohesiveness between the WNBA front leadership and WNBA players.
Absolutely. Sophia, I think you said it perfectly. We will keep a close eye on what those CBA negotiations are going to look like. And we'll be keeping an even closer eye on what the finals game number 2 is going to look like tomorrow. We'll be back with our takeaways from that game. Thank you so much for joining Kalia Butler and Sophia Jones today.